Hello everyone, bringing you a video today looking at a recreation of a British soldier or possibly a British Marine in training at the Commando Basic Training Centre up at Achnacarry in the grounds of Achnacarry Castle in the Highlands of Scotland. A little bit of background to this: the Commando Basic Training Centre had been formed as the Commando Depot at Achnacarry in 1940. It was then redesignated the Commando Basic Training Centre in 1942. It was in operation until 1946, and this is where British troops underwent their basic commando training and qualified as commandos. And obviously, latterly, the British Commando forces have primarily been, certainly the infantry component or Royal Marines, with the army supporting them. This is in a post-war context, but of course the commando training and the commando course was developed by the British Army, and the first commando troops were British Army soldiers, of course, who underwent commando training. So both Royal Marines and British Army soldiers were undergoing commando training at Achnacarry at this time, and therefore, as I say, although the video is titled British Soldier in Training, it could equally be representative of a Royal Marine of the time as well. Looking at 1944, so quite late in the war, and we'll get into the main part of the video now and have a look at the recreation of the kit and so forth. As you can see, looking at the recreation here, there's no specialised kit in use really. This is all standard British Army equipment and uniform of the time, but worn in a slightly unusual configuration, and this is based specifically on footage of men training in fieldcraft up at Achnacarry, and we'll get into the details of that as we move through the video and look at the kit. As usual, we will start with the weapon carried, and in this instance it's the rifle number 4, as you can see here. This was the predominant rifle in use in Northwest Europe at this time. Looking at the uniform in more detail, as usual, we'll start up at the top, and you can see here the ubiquitous British cap comforter. This was commonly worn by commando recruits. Obviously, not having qualified, they would not be wearing the green beret at this point, and this was essentially the standard headgear for most training. Also, as part of the fieldcraft here, you can see that the face has been camouflaged using either burnt cork, which was quite a common method. Also, cocoa powder was sometimes used as well, although the effect created here is more akin to that created with burnt cork, and certainly that was a common method of blackening or camouflaging the face at this time period. The basic uniform consists of the denim battle dress uniform, and this consists of blouse and trousers. The blouse in this instance is a slightly earlier pattern with pleated pockets, as you can see, and the trousers are of the later pattern with the double pleated dressing pockets on the leg. The web equipment carried is the standard 1937 pattern web equipment, as you can see here, still in number 97 Blanco. It's important to note that even later in the war, number 97 was still being used alongside KG3. It really depended on the unit. I'm using 97 Blanco here. And you can see the standard basic pouches. These are Mark IIs, standard webbing belt, and then the L-straps from the haversack, which is of course carried on the back. This is actually worn as a very stripped down set, as we'll see as we move around and look at the rest of the equipment. On the left hip, the spiked bayonet for the number 4 is carried, as you can see here, and this is a modified design of frog with the extra hole worked into the top loop to allow the spiked bayonet to be carried. Looking to the rear of the equipment, something to consider in more detail, which was apparent in the other angles looking at this, is the use of the camouflage face veil to cover and camouflage the equipment. And this is particularly effective when undertaking fieldcraft training, when crawling on the ground. It breaks up the outline and conceals the shiny metal components of the web equipment, as you can see here. It's simply knotted round the neck and worn down the back to cover the equipment. With this rolled up out of the way, you can see the haversack carried on the back, and you also see the back of the web belt here, and you'll notice there's a lack of braces. So the equipment is being worn here with the bayonet frog and the 2 basic pouches on the belt. No braces to support them. The pouches are simply supported by the L-straps from the haversack. So if the haversack were removed, the basic pouches would be unsupported. And this is something that's quite common to see, certainly in period footage, and I'll mention that in a little bit more detail later on. It's very common to see this for commandos training up at Achnacarry in various forms of training, going over the assault course, speed marches and so forth. The equipment is worn in this configuration without the braces, and obviously the water bottle is therefore not carried on the hip on the brace ends. It is possible the water bottle is being carried in the haversack, of course, which is how the equipment had been initially designed, and the haversack would also contain the mess tins and soft kit and small kit, as is fairly typical. You can also see that the Mark 7 ground sheet has been rolled up and folded underneath the haversack flap. To finish off, we have standard footwear here, the British Army hobnailed GS boot or ammo boot. pebble grain leather, the standard British Army ankle boot of this time period, worn with anklets, as you can see here again, the standard for the British Army at this time. So that's an overview of the recreation here. As said earlier, this is based on men training in fieldcraft, hence the camouflaging of the equipment and so forth. And it's drawn particularly from footage filmed for a documentary called Commando, the story of the Green Beret. And the Royal Marines channel on YouTube has the documentary uploaded, freely available, full length. It's well worth a watch, and I'll put a card to that in the corner of the video here. It's an excellent primary resource. There's some really very clear and very informative footage regarding commando training and the kit used at the time. I can highly recommend putting some time aside and watching that through, because it is very interesting and very informative. But that's a look at the recreation here. As I say, fairly standard kit and equipment, but worn in a slightly unusual configuration. So there we are. I do hope you found it interesting looking at that. I certainly enjoyed putting this together. The period footage that it's based on is fascinating, and as I've already said, you should go and have a look at that if you haven't watched it already. It's a very interesting period documentary on commando training and the qualification process. As I say, I do hope you found it interesting. If you have and you'd like to see more from the channel, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the little notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you'd like to support the channel, you can. Patreon and PayPal are both linked down below. And a massive thank you to everybody again who supports the channel using those two methods. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And of course, the photographs from this video will be uploaded over there as well, if you'd like to have a look in more detail. If you'd like to get in contact, but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. But that's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.